Welcome to Today's Entrepreneur, a program about the entrepreneurial spirit that drives Quebec business, presented by FL Montreal. Dan Delmar and Mike Newton with you today. Good afternoon, Mike.
Hey, Dan. How are you?
Excellent. How are you?
Very good, thank you.
Very excited about today's show because we really do have a titan of Quebec Inc. with us this week. And not just Quebec Inc., but Quebec Inc. 2.0, someone who's really helped push forward the conversation on not only Quebec tech, but Quebec entrepreneurship. He's been described rightfully as an inspirational figure in Quebec. Louis Têtu is with us today.
Yeah, it is an individual who has, acted in many capacities since he started his first business back in like 1990. But he certainly continues to fund as an angel investor. And a lot of those entities are still within Quebec, which is a little bit rare. Most of the time we see a lot of that capital after it's been made being sent elsewhere. But Louis has been very committed to the local market.
It's not every day we have the head of a public company on the show, and one that went public recently. So he'll talk about taking Coveo public. They do AI-assisted platforms for e-commerce, for retailers. And previously, he created Taleo. He and the same group of three co-founders have been working together for 30 years. So he created Taleo, which is more of an office sort of HR management software application. They sold to Oracle maybe 15 or so years ago, and now he's heading Coveo. So just a really impressive serial entrepreneur. And we'll also talk about estates and trusts on the program later with Sarah Halleckman of FL Fuller Landau. But first, diving into our thought leadership segment, Mike. And when we talk about finding success and finding purpose, this is something that I think Louis will touch on. They think about this at their business a lot. They certainly write about it. Purpose, I said on a recent show, is going to be the key business communications word of maybe the next year. Whereas resilience may have been the word for the previous year. We are resilient. We've made it. Now what?
So there's a couple of things at play here, and we'll talk about this with Louis a bit later. Is our bottom line evaluation continues to change in business, and for the longest time it was dollars and cents. It was clear, and obviously on the capital markets and taking a company public, the bottom line is still the driver of a stock price. But with the employees and with your team, I think part of this is twofold. One is purpose, and the other is accountability. And the purpose of an entrepreneur, or the purpose even of an employee, goes a long way in building commitment and building passion in what you're doing. And if you don't have purpose, then it's very hard to be committed. And I have to tell you that I think a lot of people have not really spent the time, or hadn't pre-COVID. I don't know if they've spent the time COVID since they've been home and they've had a little more time to determine what their purpose is in life and what it is that they want to do and what emphasis they want to place on that. And can they find a business environment that matches their purpose, or are these two congruent, or are they going to be incongruous for the rest of their careers? And I think that's going to be a big challenge for a lot of people. And I think you have to take into account, who are the key relationships in your life, inside and outside of work, in terms of finding that purpose. And if you're going to spend 12 or 14 hours a day at the office, or you're going to spend it at your home office, you still need to have, what you're doing. And a lot of people, certainly the younger generation, wants to focus on more than just work. Now, that some of them can do it through work. You can find a way in ESG, you can find a way to create a culture and a way to give back within the business. If you can meld those two together, then your purpose and your business are aligned. If not, how does that now play into the time and the energy that you spend in work and the ability for you to do things outside of it? How do you find that meaningful craft in personal and professional life?
Purpose has always been like too much of a consideration for me. I think in the early days, it's in my logo. It's the two opposing speech bubbles. I talk a lot about my family history, even on my business's website. And now I think is a really, really great time for entrepreneurs who have probably spent too much time philosophizing, as I have, to really put themselves out there, because we're at a point, I think, in history where conversations are breaking down a little bit. And I think now is a pretty good time, whereas people may have been shy in the last couple of years and under the pandemic and all that. I think now's a really good time for an activist entrepreneur to come out a little bit.
Yeah, I think you got to be careful to a certain degree that the pendulum doesn't swing completely the other way, and we go from having no social conscience to having nothing but a social conscience. I think we have to, like everything else, we have to find that balance in what we're doing. For a lot of people, purpose is what drives them, what gears them. If they happen to get lucky to be able to meld that with a business, then there's a way to make money that allows the money to be the continue the purpose. For a lot of people, it's the purpose that then continues the money, or the money that continue. I mean, you've got this constant battle going on, depending, I guess, maybe on what generation and how you see things. The concern is how realistic is the purpose and making an impact if you can't find a way to make money while you're doing it too. And I know that there's a lot of people rolling their eyes at me making that statement, but unfortunately, a lot of the things that we want to do that make a difference in the world are going to require us to have some kind of business imprint, unless you just happen to inherit a whole lot of money.
I'm a big believer in effective altruism. So the when people ask me this from a PR perspective, entrepreneurs, how do I give away more of myself? I just say, just do it. Just give away more of your expertise. Do whatever you do best for free once in a while for those in need. It's just that simple.
Yeah, and I think there's a huge generational difference in this thought process, where I think a lot of my generation worked hard, built wealth so that they could then give back to the community. And that was part of, hey, the community's been good to us, now let's be good to the community. Where I think the younger generation is almost starting off on the other foot, saying, I want to make an impact in my community early on. And how do I get there? Doing what I need to do. So it creates a very interesting, discussion, and it goes back to, what is your definition of a bottom line? And I think we're going to continue to struggle with that for some time.
So holding yourself accountable to your purpose, to your goals. This is from HBR. Three big tips here. One, enlist an accountability partner. Two, go public in declaring and sharing your goals. And three, change your environment.
Yeah, look, there's no doubt that an individual is much easier or much more accountable when they know that somebody else is watching. They feel this sense of responsibility. I mean, the oldest story in the book is, if I tell you I'm going to meet you to go jogging at 6 a.m. and I know you're going to be there, I'll show up. If I say I'm going to set my alarm for 6 a.m. and jog by myself, guess what I'm not going to do tomorrow morning. So the reality is it falls into, we as human beings sometimes need somebody to hold us accountable. Find the right person, find the person that makes you feel like, hey, you're doing the job, you're getting things done, enough of a kick in the butt to make sure that you follow what you need to do, but not to the point where that accountability partner becomes degrading and it has a negative effect on what you're doing. And again, once you go public and once you share your goals, is exactly the same thing. If I say I'm committed to do something, then I know people are counting on it. There's this automatic accountability that's created the moment I say it out loud. If I keep it inside, the only person I'm accountable to is myself. And not that that's a bad thing, because I think you still have to be accountable to yourself at the end of the day. My father told me for years, son, you're the only one that's looking in the mirror at the end of the day. So you're only accountable to yourself. But the same token, the more that I say it aloud, the more I put it out there for other people, the more now I've got people that are relying on me to be accountable. And the more that affects them, the more that I need to make sure that I stick to what I've said.
HBR has another interesting piece here on accountability. Does your team have an accountability problem? How can you diagnose that? How do you tell if you as a leader, or some of your executives, or your most key employees, how can you tell if they have an accountability issue?
Dan, I think this is going to be one of the biggest issues that we are going to face in the next 12 to 18 months, is this sense of accountability with everyone, and is our team being accountable? The whole COVID, work from home, isolation, fear factor has created a very different thought process. We've talked in the past about change of paradigms. We've talked about where things may be headed. I think right now we have a problem, and I think that problem is going back to being accountable. And is our team accountable not only to the business, but are they accountable to their team members? Are they accountable to their their teammates that are sitting next to them? And one of the things that we find, and it really is, and it's a difficult issue to address, but as me looking for you to be accountable to me, Dan, have I been clear about what my expectations are? Have I asked what I can do to help? How am I helping to participate in your accountability? So if we go back to the previous, article, we were talking about, hey, once I say it aloud, it now becomes real. So how is my involvement in your accountability help? And we have a terrible tendency to kind of sit on our hands and say, well, people aren't accountable. I think the biggest issue really, self-awareness in all of these issues. And if you can recognize that you're playing a role, if you recognize that you're accountable to other people, I've used the term a few times in the last month or so that I think what we're looking at right now is a bunch of navel gazers as we come out of COVID. And I think that you have to be self-aware. I think you have to recognize that the world is no longer about me. When we were in lockdown and we were doing what we could to protect our families and do whatever, I mean, obviously that created a very different outlook on the world. And as I said, it's a bit of a navel gazing approach to life. It's inward looking. We need to go back to being outward looking. And whether that's in our communities, whether that's in our jobs, we need to be held accountable, not just to a few people around us. We need to be held accountable to the community and to the society again. And I think this is an area that's going to take some time for us to break ground and get traction with again, because I feel that there is a lack of accountability right now, and that is top to bottom in every organization. Some people have shone throughout this whole scenario, and other people need to wake back up again and find out where their place lies and how they now stand in terms of being accountable to the team around them. We cannot reemerge if one or two people are going to do it themselves.
Real quick on the mechanics or the logistics of accountability, Mike. We've talked about this before. I'm not a fan of Slack, notifications, pestering employees to hand stuff in and whatnot. What advice would you give to entrepreneurs who just want to implement some kind of process for this?
It's communication, it's talking, it's getting the teams together. It's, we're all, let's face it, we're all video conferenced out at this point. At some point we will hopefully be back to face again, but we need that communication. And the most important aspect is we need to be clear in what we need people to be participating in. And if I sit back and I look at this and I go, hey, you know what, so-and-so's not being accountable, and all I do is stick my head in the sand, I'm as much of a problem as they are. We need to be addressing it. We need to find a way to have an open dialogue on issues that are probably going to be a little tenuous for some time as people try and find their way back to things. So I think it revolves around communication. I think it revolves around, setting expectations. And I think that's a very difficult thing right now for people to do, is to set those expectations. They're afraid to be too aggressive or not aggressive enough.
And our special guest is the co-founder of a company that was bought by Oracle. It's called Taleo, and he is currently the CEO of Coveo, which recently went public. It's an AI-powered platform for digital experiences. And when we talk about Quebec Inc. 2.0, Louis Têtu is certainly at the head of the pack. So first, the simplest question, please, what is Coveo?
Well, Coveo is a software company. We're about 750 employees and growing, and as you mentioned, now a public company. And what we do essentially is we provide a platform to businesses, mostly large global enterprises, that helps them use their data alongside with artificial intelligence to personalize their digital experiences. So that applies to commerce. Think about your commerce experiences, your customer service experiences. When you go on websites, how do you make that experience personal? A little bit like a Netflix would do for you. Once they ask you, who's watching, they assemble content that's just for you. So when you apply artificial intelligence to areas such as commerce, for instance, or customer service, there are significant benefits both for the consumer as well as the enterprise, and that also applies to the workplace. So essentially, we're pretty much the leader on the global scene in that technology.
How did you initially get involved in Coveo? Obviously there's a bit of history, and we'll get into a little bit later in terms of your background. But how did you start in Coveo?
I met people much smarter than I who had started the business, and Coveo was kind of an offspring of a company in Quebec named Copernic Technologies, which had been founded by Laurent Simoneau, Richard Tessier, and Marc Sanfasson. And basically, I was still chairman of Taleo in the US. At the time, which was also a software company, a public software company on the NASDAQ. And I became the angel investor in Coveo in 2008. And initially the chairman working with Laurent and et cetera. And when Oracle Corporation bought Taleo, Laurent asked me to come and work with him. And since I'm an extremely bad golfer and all I know is software, I decided to join him in the journey, which has been wonderful.
Interesting. So you go back to, I guess we'll do a little bit of history, but I guess you're a 1985 grad of University of Laval with an engineering degree. So you've pretty much been dabbling in the tech world for quite a few years now. You had your first company. It was a 1990 software company that eventually, I guess, you played the tech bubble a little bit in that time frame. So give us a little bit of experience, maybe as to how that company started and what it was like to come up in the 90s in the tech world.
Right. Well, I would say it was a little bit by accident, but it was related to my family. I graduated in engineering and mechanical engineering, and actually with a goal to be in aerospace engineering, and had followed some aerodynamics specialty and etc. And became a helicopter pilot actually at the time. And my brother had started a company in industrial engineering software, and in 1989 asked me to join. And subsequently, my two guys who are still my partners here at Coveo, Jean Lavigueur and Guy Gauvin. So we've been now working together for 32 years, and we were, I guess, too young to be fearful, and didn't have a lot of responsibilities, and ended up growing a software company that when I was 26-year-old, had some offices in South America, Mexico, the Netherlands, Australia, Germany. And we merged that company with a Dutch company named the Bond Software, which went public on the NASDAQ in 1995. So we were kind of fortunate. Sometimes in life things happen, and you just have to be there and say yes, I guess. And so we had an amazing ride at Bond. The company was growing very quickly, and we had global operations and so on. So we learned at a very young age how to play on the global technology scene, mostly in the enterprise software space. And then in 1999, we wrote the business plan for Taleo.
In Quebec for the last 20 years, there's been really an incredible boom. I mean, we're really a tech center, and it's certainly an AI center around the world. What's in the water? What's in the education system? What are we doing right in the space?
Well, we're doing a lot of things right. We have things to improve as well. But we've been able to, produce an education system and a research environment that has produced some great talent. Have we really made the most of that talent, to build wealth here in Quebec and Canada, as opposed to being the low-cost engineering branch of the world? That frankly could be debatable. Whether the produce of our education system is really contributing to building more Shopifys and more Coveos and more Lightspeeds and Nuvais and others. But we're here with still quite a lot of talent and know-how that we're now learning, and we're now learning to build, global technology players that can be leaders on the global scene, and Canadian owned, and that I think that's a good thing.
So I grew up through that whole technology environment and growth. And I have to tell you that for many, many years, I've thought that the technology growth in Montreal has been a little bit like the old Montreal Expos were, as kind of a feeder system for the rest of Major League Baseball. And I think technology has done that. We've had great R&D and great growth programs, but have not been able to keep the talent and the money in Montreal. So, yeah.
Well, it's been the policy of I know this is a maybe getting off topic, but it's been the policy of our governments, for 2 decades, to go elsewhere in foreign countries, and in fact even pay companies to come here and hire our talent. And so now we're obviously seeing the effect of that, because we need technology talent everywhere, and there's a shortage in Canada. So look, companies like Coveo, and what we've been trying to do is to revert that, and basically, hopefully, that can maybe inspire others that we can build. It's not about attracting Amazon in Canada. It's about building Amazon and other Amazon or something like that, whatever, whether it's the size of Amazon or not, that doesn't matter. But it's about building an owner's economy. And we're very proud as a team, and I think we should be, and our employees should be, that, we can show, that this is possible, that we can, raise the capital here in the country and build companies who are truly global technology leaders, as Coveo is, because we are a leader in their space, in our space. Name a company in Silicon Valley, in the tech world, there's a very, very high probability, certainly more than 50%, that they are a Coveo customer. And so we're very proud of that.
Louis, just to continue in that thought, I mean, obviously, in order for us to maintain the talent and the quality, we need the serial entrepreneurs like yourself who are continuing to invest in the province as well as reinvest in the province. And I think the fascinating aspect of, the multiple organizations you've started and continue to run is that element. I mean, we lose so many of the entrepreneurs to, I guess, I don't know if it's a greater environment when they leave Quebec, but not a lot of them stay. And it's, I applaud you for the time and the effort and the energy that you continue to pump back in. And it's, it's one thing to make the money. It's another thing to continue to be an angel and move forward like you did with Coveo.
Well, thank you. No, there's so much talent here. I'm pretty active in a number of startups and bigger companies, bigger tech companies on the local scene, and there's some amazing talent. I'm involved in a company named Vention with Etienne Lacroix in Montreal as the CEO. You guys should interview Etienne. He's one of the best. Patrice Gilbert at Pedal MD, he's probably got one of the best medical platforms in the world on the internet. There's many others, and it's just a matter of changing the strategy. And entrepreneurs are people who wake up in the morning with and refuting the status quo, I guess, and taking action. It's one thing to complain or talk about what should be done. Entrepreneurs, I think, are people who just proceed and take action to change things and take initiative, and that's what we try to encourage. Our employees, and we have a certain value system to build these companies, and that we think is important for success in any business, and that we care about.
And Louis, you went public recently. Now, not the first time you've done that. After the second, third time, is it a little less nerve-wracking? Because it just seems to me like the most nerve-wracking process any business owner could go through.
It's definitely a lot of work, and you have to take that work very seriously and be prepared for it, and so on. I would say nerve-wracking, no. You go public, first of all, going public is never a destination, should never be. And unfortunately, you hear in some of the narrative of entrepreneurs sometimes, or even investors, that, it's almost feels like a destination. Going public is actually the end of the beginning. It's the end of the beginning for a company. It's fundamentally a milestone. It's a financing event. And you do that because you see a path to growth and investor return, and kind of a long-term view that, you get to a point and the size and a stature, I guess, in your industry where, it makes sense, for a certain set of reasons, to be a public company and access the public markets for capital. And you prepare for that. This is an event that you should always be prepared to continue as a private company. And, I always compare it, to, I'm a hiker. I like to hike on weekends and, mountains and stuff. And there's two metaphors that I think I always use, just because I happen to know that a little bit. The first one is that, the journey in business, and it applies to business, the journey is always much more important than the destination. So if you focus on the journey, ultimately the destination actually tends to get better. And that's always been our philosophy, never to seek to be a public company or et cetera as a goal, but it's really along the Coveo journey and the growth, raising capital and so on. We raised 247 million, which is something that we know what to do with, right? And we can invest in the business and continue to grow globally. My second metaphor I use as it relates to hiking is, it's amazing how high you can go one step at a time when you climb a mountain, and at your own pace. And that's a philosophy that we apply. We build Coveo one customer at a time, one employee at a time, one great relationship at a time, with a duty of care and trust, towards first and foremost our employees, and then that carries through to our customers, and then last our shareholders, in that order. That's kind of the order of things. And for us, it's worked. So back, full circle back to your question. Pardon me for the long answer, but no, not nerve-wracking. Certainly tremendous amount of work. We have a wonderful finance and legal team, and a great team all around that was able to execute that flawlessly, and we're very proud of that.
There's nothing that scares me more when I talk to a young entrepreneur and I ask them what their goal is, and their goal is to go public.
Yeah.
That's a really bad start to the conversation.
Exactly.
I think one of the things, the words you just used, I think somewhere between philosophical, and clearly a man that's had the experience to go that route before. I think the ability to compartmentalize, the difficult world of capital markets and your personal life, I think, as you've mentioned, has been a big help in maintaining the serenity and that balance that you have in life. And you mentioned hiking, but I know you're a family man and you spend time with the family. Clearly you've found a way to compartmentalize. And I would tell you that a lot of the very successful entrepreneurs that I've met over the years that have gone public have had that strength, that ability to be able to say, there's a wall, there's a line, and not drag everything home with them.
Well, it's a business, right? And there are things, a business is important in the sense that it engages people. I've said a few years, I gave a talk to the Montreal Chamber of Commerce, and some people still talk about that sentence when I said more people in Quebec and in Canada, and probably across the world, should have that one feeling of, maybe leaving the office last at night and, at 10 p.m. Not to say that I do that often. I don't, frankly. But, when that happens, and then walking around the office and seeing all the desks with the pictures of the babies and the families and the kids and, all of that. And you feel that responsibility, right? And the good thing about building a business is the ability of a common project, and purpose to engage a group of people towards a purpose, in a way that respects a set of values. You do it in an ethical way, you do it in a collaborative way, and in a way that we always say at Coveo, we cannot build a great company unless our people are well. I fundamentally believe that. And so back to your point, Mike, I think it's really about keeping that balance, the wellness, my own wellness, and then the wellness of every individual in the company, in fueled by that balance, in fact, that we can keep, impacts, the wellness of the firm and the creativity and all of that. When I ski on the weekend or go hike or bike or whatever that can be, could be carpentry or sewing, it doesn't matter. Or playing the piano, something happens in the brain, I guess. You still think about it, and that's how, people become creative, right? You get a lot. You don't get ideas, in the meeting from 9 to 10 on Wednesday morning. It's just not how the creative process works. And then if you combine that, I'm a firm believer that creativity happens with human collisions. Innovation happens with human collisions of diverse people who think differently, come from different backgrounds. If you put people in a room who all look the same, talk the same, have the same background and so on, you won't get a lot of innovation in homogeneity. And so if you combine that mix, so there is a bit of a thought process and a philosophy behind building, I believe, any durable, solid business that we try to, and oddly enough, I focus more on that than on the actual, I'm the dumbest guy as it relates to technology, to be honest with you.
Well, most successful entrepreneurs have surrounded themselves with people that they say are significantly more intelligent than them.
Oh, you always want
that's the way to go.
Be the dumbest guy in the crowd.
100%.
I guarantee you that it's so much better to be the dumbest guy in the crowd.
So you segued into my next question better than I could have, which is this whole discussion of teams and culture and employment, and in a world that everybody's complaining that they can't find talent right now, or the right talent. How is Coveo dealing with staffing and engaging and trying to maintain a culture in an environment that is less than optimal?
The environment is clearly less than optimal, I will say in our case, we saw it coming. We ran Taleo, which was the largest employment platform on the internet in the world. And so we knew back in 2008 that it was already full employment in the digital world. I'm saying 2008. And we told that to the government at the time because we had the big data. And the reason we knew that is because companies that were posting, job openings in the digital world were not getting candidates, to a higher, they were getting candidates at a much lower rate, obviously. And yet, we continued, as a society to sort of try to give away our talent and et cetera. So what we created, in fact, is an environment where we imported the inflation and we imported the scarcity of talent to a degree. And so companies like Taleo and Coveo became the farm team. We're the farm team for Facebook, we're the farm team for Google, et cetera. So obviously we had to learn to fight back. One of the, that is one of the key attributes of being a public company is, you can grant, restricted stock units and things of that nature. There's some instruments that being a public company helps you to do, in addition to capital and in addition to scale. And so suddenly you have the means of your ambitions, but it's really difficult to compete unless then you complement that with another dimension, which is really that dimension of belonging, of participating, I think. And I'm not suggesting a Coveo or any other company is necessarily made for everyone, but, we're very clear about our ambition to be a leader, to be the leader in our space. We believe there's only room for number one in technology. So in everything we do, we seek to be number one. It's pretty simple. So not a big number to remember. It's number one, and by a certain set of metrics and et cetera. So we want to be a leader. We want growth, and we want to do it. We choose our value systems. There's many things we can't predict, but the things we know is we know our value system. We know we want to be a leader, and we know we want to grow, and we know by how much. And so that's kind of the rule, and we make that very, very clear. And the employees who want to participate in that, I guess for them it's exciting, and it becomes the very important dimension that is I guess becomes hard to find elsewhere. But again, we've never pretended that we're the only ones. We think we're a pretty darn good, if not great, company. We think the future is pretty promising for our business, given what we see and what we do and the value we create for customers. And we think, there's a lot of benefits in, on an individual level and individual growth to participate in that, in the building of a leader. And then people make their own choices, right? We can't do more than that.
Yeah, the last question I'm going to ask you is an interesting one. I think if you would have taken a company public 10, 15, 20 years ago, you had pretty much one bottom line. Today's world, I feel like we have two bottom lines. We have the financial bottom line that's important to the investors and the shareholders and the stakeholders, yet we have the bottom line as well for the employees. And that's a different definition of profit and success.
Right.
How do you balance those two?
Yeah, well, I'm very much with you there, and I think it's not just for the employees. I think at the end of the day, it goes back to the purpose. The purpose is much broader than what it used to be. We're certainly very proud at Coveo. I don't know if you might have seen that or missed that, but upon IPO, we pioneered something in Canada, which is the 1% pledge. So we pledged 1% of our employees' time, 1% of all our worldwide AI platform and data processing capabilities and products, 1% of our profits when we gain that operating leverage. But last but not least, the investors of this company have pledged 1% of the entire company equity, in a fund and, in the structure of an endowment to actually, and we think our cause is, we have obviously several legs to our ESG strategy, but the big one on the S side is we think that 5 billion people on this planet don't have equal access to knowledge and education. And we think knowledge and education is the ultimate equalizer. And that because somewhat linked to our capabilities at Coveo, we can, we have access to data, to knowledge, we can unlock it and we can deliver it, personal, anywhere in the world to any individual. We think we can contribute to democratizing knowledge and education. And I think the employees, so we have, 6 committees, 80 of our employees participating in that and building that and so on. That's exciting. And that goes full circle back to what I mentioned before, which is a company is a project that, engages people. And when that's the focus, as opposed to money and so on, if you do that, again, the destination for shareholders will be better. If you focus on that journey, the destination for the shareholders will be better. We're lucky we have shareholders who understand that and understand the set of priorities, which is number 1, employees, number 2, customers, and yes, shareholders, you're going to be number 3, because if we miss on the 2 first ones, you're not going to get anything anyway. And so, as long as you understand that, so yes, the bottom line, as you said, Mike, is much more than obviously just the earnings call for the shareholders, obviously.
Louis Têtu of Coveo. Hang on, and he'll be around for his one piece of advice for today's entrepreneur that's on the way, and a hiking recommendation too. We'll get to that as well. But first, let's talk to our expert. This time, it's Sarah Halleckman, partner of estates and trusts at FL Fuller Landau. Sarah, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me.
And Mike, certainly a lot of planning goes into estates and trusts, a lot of documents wrapped up into business, and this could be several months, sometimes years of work.
Yeah, and it's the type of thing that needs to be considered far enough in advance for any kind of planning that you're going to do. So, I mean, nobody better to explain it, I guess, Sarah, than, what is an estate freeze and when would you consider doing one?
Right. So an estate freeze is really one of the most common estate tax planning strategies we use for business owners. And to understand why, we kind of need to take a step back and remember that upon the death of an individual, that individual is deemed to have disposed of all of their assets at their fair market value as at that date. And those dispositions ultimately create capital gains, potentially capital losses as at that date of death. And then there'll be tax owed on those gains. So in most cases, it's quite easy to figure out the value of assets, of let's say an investment portfolio, a home that's maybe owned, even an RSP or a RIF. And we can kind of figure out the gains on those and figure out what the tax owed will be. However, in the case of private company shares, obviously the valuation is a little bit more complicated. The cost base can often be low or nothing really. And that means that the taxable gain on that disposition upon death may be quite significant. It's also not generally so easy to sell shares of a private company. Even if they are sellable, could take quite a long time for that transaction to close. So upon death, a business owner is essentially left with a large tax bill for these private company shares, but without any readily available cash flow to pay that tax. And that's when an estate freeze comes in. An estate freeze allows us to freeze the value that's currently held by that shareholder. They exchange that value in essence for preferred shares that have a fixed value, and that allows us to plan for an ultimate tax bill owing upon their passing. And it also allows us to attribute the future growth of this business, assuming this business is going to keep operating. The future growth can then be transferred to the next generation, whether that may be children or grandchildren, other family members, by way of issuing new common shares.
So just to clarify, you're using these in intergenerational tax planning maneuvers when there's a family member or someone that you're going to pass the torch to within that business, and you're basically setting the groundwork today for future growth to go elsewhere, so that you know what your tax bill is more or less. Absolutely. At this point.
Absolutely.
Okay. And I mean, obviously, what are some of the other considerations that need to be taken into place here? I mean, you can't do it, the estate freeze 3 days before somebody passes, and you kind of loses the effect. So what kind of timing is here, and what, who should you be talking to?
Exactly. So, look, there's a lot of benefits to an estate freeze. Obviously, every family situation, every business situation is very different, and we really can't give like general, yes, everybody should do an estate freeze. The particular situation really needs to be taken into account. And that being said, so firstly, a few things to consider. First and foremost, this shareholder who's going to freeze his shares, is he ready and willing to hand off that growth to somebody else, to not necessarily be the person who's going to benefit from it? And at the same time, is the value he's freezing, does he have enough wealth for the rest of his life? Are his assets enough to kind of cover him? If this shareholder is quite young, it really might be too early in the game to forego future growth. Sometimes in those situations, we could consider a partial freeze. And then there's the aspect of control. Is this person ready to relinquish potentially control, some ownership of their business? Is it really the right time based on that? And you mentioned the timeline. So for an estate freeze to be beneficial, especially in transferring that future growth to future generations, if let's say we know there's a third party sale down the line, well, we can't do the freeze right before the third party sale. Those new shares will have no growth because no time has passed. So really, for an estate freeze to be valuable, the business needs to have enough time for the value of it to grow, for there to be a gain attributed to those new growth shares, for it to be worthwhile to go through the transaction.
So it sounds like you need your tax practitioner, your BVAL person, and possibly the psychologist to deal with the family business interactions and who's getting what. So sounds like a full group that's required in this exercise. Thanks, Sarah.
No problem.
Sarah Halleckman, partner estates and trusts at FL Fuller Landau. Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks so much.
And at the end of our show, we turn to our profile, Louis Têtu of Coveo, and we ask him, sir, for your one piece of advice for today's entrepreneur.
Well, my first piece of advice would be never to give advice and let people think. But that being said, I'll talk about beliefs as opposed to advice. I think if you're building a business, you need to understand. I would say business is about three things. It's about purpose. Understand, make sure you really understand the purpose, and what's the purpose beyond yourself. Beyond the company, what's bigger than you, that, what purpose do you serve that is bigger than you? Number two is care. It's duty of care. If you care about your employees, if you care about your employees, your employees will care about your customers. It'll not the other way around. And, meaning that if you don't care about your employees and you say you care about your customers, it's not going to happen. So duty of care towards employees, customers, and all the stakeholders. And number three, it's about trust. So it's really a focus on people, building trust among, fostering a climate of trust among people. and that goes squarely against micromanaging or any of that, or the fact that maybe hierarchy is a system for ownership of the truth and so on. You never want to seek in a business who's right. You want to seek the truth, and empower people to trust themselves and trust each other, and so on. So purpose, care, and trust. Focus on people, and the rest tends to take care of itself.
One last quick piece of advice: your favorite hike in Quebec, because I'm a big believer in entrepreneurs getting out in nature at the end of a week.
Well, many. I would say Saint-Urbain in Charlevoix is a beautiful, beautiful place, but I don't have that much time. I try to climb, don't laugh, but it's simple, Mont Saint-Anne every weekend. And so that's sort of what I do, both with the skis and the skis with the skins, or just regular hiking. So
excellent. Thank you so much, Louis. I got to say, Dan, I have one regret in today's show, and that's that we're not a 2-hour program this week. Louis, I could go on for at least another hour with you. Fascinating and also heartwarming in the sense that we're talking about Quebec Inc. We're talking about trying to keep people close to home. We're talking about people and their families. You've done a lot of things, and as I said earlier on, you should be a proud man for what you've accomplished, and not only on the bottom line, but as you continue to move forward. So thank you for your time. Good luck on your 2.5 months, I guess, into an IPO. It's not always going to be rosy. So I know the 2021 was a rough year for tech companies on IPOs, but I think your earnings call did a nice job this week. So congratulations.
No, thank you very much for your kind words, Mike and Dan. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
And Mike, another tech company next week on the show, much newer. It's Ava, the Quebec co-op rideshare. They're going to be profiled on the program next time. Reminder that you can subscribe to Today's Entrepreneur as a podcast on iHeartRadio, iTunes, or your favorite platform. And you can also log on to the website, today'sentrepreneur.org, for hundreds of local entrepreneur profiles from the last 14 years. See you back here next week. Bye-bye.
This has been a production of TNKR Media. Good talk.